Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with Rocks and Stocks News. We've got another of our interviews with executives of mining companies. In this case, a frequent guest in i-80 Gold's Ewan. I just watched a conference. Ewan spoke at the Beaver Creek conference, and what surprised me is a lot of these mining conferences, I think there's people that have a lot to say about little. In the i-80's case, Ewan had a little time to say a lot, and he was still cramped for time. So there's no time clock on our interview here, Ewan. We can get right into everything.
Yeah, thanks, Allan. Yeah, I think the clock had 13 minutes and I had to talk about 5 different projects. So it didn't give me much time on a couple of them.
Well, you've got a tremendous, remarkable group of assets. Let's start with just what I consider a world-class company-making project in your Granite Creek project. What was the headline from the latest news there, Ewan? I got it here. New assays include 44 grams of gold over 6.4 meters, 19 grams over 10 meters, and 10 meters of 10 grams over 14.5 meters. What's blown me away about this project, Ewan, is you started out with the historical mining. You got the OG right beside it. Then it blows out into this South Pacific zone. And the continuity, we've talked before about the importance of continuity in a high-grade gold project. You guys got that in spades.
Yeah, this last release was I think really continues to speak of the continuity of this zone. Some of the drilling we did that we just released was defining the edges. As you know, this zone occurs starting at about a depth of about 200 to 250 meters and continues below that. So we've been doing some of our drilling up dip sort of as we go. We're preparing a resource for the South Pacific zone that we expect to release early next year. And to do that, you have to define the edges so that you can actually have the project. So we've
well, to do it right, and a lot of companies rush to a resource before they've even got to the limits of of what they're looking at.
Yeah, well, definitely we haven't reached the limits, but we really wanted to make sure we defined the upper limit and we've defined the southern limit. So we're drilling around those part of the deposits, and then as included in that was some step out drilling and some infill drilling for the resource purposes. And both the infill and the step out drilling at depth and to the north continue to yield results consistently of 8 to 40 grams. It's remarkable at when you drill into this zone, everything pretty much runs 10 grams or better. So it's been a pretty remarkable discovery for us to define. It remains open at depth. It remains open to the north. And next year, we've basically finished the surface drilling for this year. So there'll be more results coming. And then we're doing the resource. And we're starting to plan and do our budgeting process for next year, where we will continue to step out to the north and hopefully make this deposit much bigger. As you mentioned, the original Otto and the main mine area have a strike length of about 150 meters, whereas when you include the Otto all the way to where we've defined the South Pacific zone, the strike length has increased to about 750 meters. That's about a 5 times increase in strike length with the inclusion of the South Pacific zone. And obviously that translates to many more ounces per vertical meter and should translate to a lot better mining in the future. And with these grades, I would expect very high margins as well.
That you brought up the vertical component, and what I've also noticed in your drilling is the high grade seems to be getting higher as you go deeper and getting wider.
Yeah, especially in the OG zone, some of our drilling at depth in the OG zone have yielded by far the biggest widths and intercept. I think our deepest hole has the widest intervals. There was 3 intervals of say 10, 15 meters of 8 to, I believe, almost 20 grams per ton. So 3 different zones in our deep hole. So that zone continues to get looks like it could continue to get bigger as we go deeper. And in terms of assay results to date, our deepest hole into the South Pacific zone is over 16 grams over more than 15 meters. True width of about 10 plus meters of, half an ounce per ton isn't too bad.
I'm often looking at valuations of companies, Ewan, and without naming names, there was a company that got taken over for about $1.5 billion. You guys currently trade at 500 million, and you have superior by far continuity of high grade.
I believe so as well. I know the one you're talking about. I even look at one of the, there's been a few takeovers in Nevada over the years, but if you even look at the Long Canyon project that Frontier was taken over by Newmont for, that was a 1.6, $1.8 billion transaction for a Nevada project that has less ounces that we have as a company.
Wow. And if people want to see that tremendous continuity, go to their last news release that they talked about Granite Creek, and you can see the long section, and it's just littered with those high grade hits along strike and as you follow it to depth. But there's another map you should also take a look at, which is their plan view, because on the plan view, you can see the strike. And you can also see those dots, if you will, over, let's say it strikes north to south, but if you look at the east or west, there's also a pretty significant dispersion of those high-grade hits in that dimension as well, right, Ewan?
Yeah, and that the surface image is showing the deposit as it dips, because it dips at about 70 degrees. And that's why it looks like that blob, and the intercepts are coming into that. But like I said, that red blob is continuing north, and there's an old homestake hole that was drilled, I'd say probably 25 years ago, a further 400 meters along strike from where we're drilling, that hit pretty high grade mineralization. I think the highest grade was, there were narrow intercepts, but up to over 16 grams per ton. So we think that hole proves that the South Pacific zone is going to go at least another 400 meters to the north, and that's the area we'll be drilling next year.
And then it's still got that that depth dimension that's wide open.
Yeah, we're down 1,500 feet, so 500 meters in drilling now. So, and we have the underground workings are so close to this zone that a lot of the expansion at depth we expect to do from underground. We're trying to get the decline down at Granite Creek as fast as we can to a depth where we can start driving across to the South Pacific zone. In fact, our target is to be driving that drift over to the South Pacific zone in the fourth quarter of this year or early in the first quarter. Then we'll facilitate underground drilling, at least in the upper parts, in the second half of next year. And hopefully by the end of next year, we'll actually be mining the South Pacific zone.
Wow.
And from that drift will give us a better position. We'll be down halfway to the bottom of the deposit. We'll have much shorter holes to continue stepping out at depth. And underground drilling on a per meter basis costs about half as much as surface drilling. So looking at getting more bang for our buck with drilling from underground in the future, and also being closer to the deposits. You don't get as much deviation in drill holes. So we're doing everything we can to not only make this deposit bigger and hopefully makes the property better, but also get it into our mine plan on an accelerated basis, because we think it's going to be highly profitable, good ground conditions. So we might actually be able to employ some long hole mining methods in this zone. And it really will be, to me, it's the big part of the future of this deposit.
Okay, so earlier I talked about the remarkable group of assets that you have. And I think that if you compare apples to apples, you're undervalued just on Granite Creek alone. But the I'm starting to call it the elephant in the room is what's happening at your Ruby Hills area. I mean, I was pretty much speechless when you put out the Ruby Deeps results. Now you're getting closer to the pit and it's continuing in that direction on the west side of the pit. And then on the southern side of the pit, you just announced a very impressive CRD mineralization. This I think this is a company maker. I think Granite Creek's a company maker, and you got two company making world-class projects on your hands.
I tend to agree with you. It's been pretty remarkable the success we've had at these two acquisitions. Yeah, Ruby Hill is really shaping up to become our flagship asset. The Ruby Deep Zone, that's what we really bought the project for, is for the deeper sulfide deposit, because there's a few holes into it by Barrick and Newmont, big widths, big grades, and completely open. So we're like, well, you don't see that every day. And, being a sulfide deposit, not too many people can process it.
Which is probably the reason that Barrick didn't run with it more, because they were looking for oxide Nevada projects at that time close to surface. So sulfides probably didn't excite them that much.
Yeah, at the time they were mining here, and when they did drill Ruby Deeps, the sulfide deposit, probably 60 to 70% of their production at that time was oxide. And even the Ruby Hill pit was oxide. And the sulfide deposits they were developing then, they had, moderately limited capacity to process back then. So since then, they built, I believe it's 9 autoclaves at Goldstrike. There's 9 vessels in the Goldstrike facility. And the company has transitioned to become where I think of today, 80% of their production is from sulfide. So it's just more than a decade later, here they have transitioned from oxide to sulfide. So their focus and their targets for exploration development have changed to now they're actually looking for more sulfides, much like we are.
You said in your Beaver Creek presentation that back then 80% of the mining in Nevada was in the oxides, and now it's looking like 80% is in the sulfides.
Yeah, so over the last 20 years, it has definitely transitioned like that. And of the 5 processing facilities in Nevada, they owned 4 of them. And we were fortunate last year to buy one of their 4, or make a deal to acquire one of their 4. We traded our 40% interest in South Arturo. That really puts us in a unique position to be able to pursue sulfide. So Ruby Hill was definitely one we were looking at for the Ruby Deeps deposit. But what's really got our excitement up is the fact that Ruby Hill doesn't just have gold, it's got base metals. And the blackjack deposit that
before we get into that, and I wanted to mention to people that having that facility is a possible growth tool of the future, because there's a lot of open sulfide potential in Nevada that could make sense for your facility.
Yeah, that's true. But I'd say for the most part, Nevada Gold Mines owns all of those other sulfide projects. We definitely keep an eye open on other people's press releases. Even I look a bit at Timberline to the south of us. They put out some results last week in their drilling. They've got a sulfide zone that broad intercepts a moderate grade, but within that, they've got some pretty compelling high grade. So we're definitely watching what they're doing. There's, we are looking at historic properties all over the state just to see, when they finish mining these open pits, were there any sulfide hits around that could be compelling, and identified a couple, but more so we see our properties as having the most upside. And
that's the main focus, is to feed your own facility from your own projects. I interrupted you getting started on the base metals, and what really stood out to me is that I went and did some homework after our last conversation. I used one of my favorite exploration tools, which is Google Earth, and you can see the big regional faults going through and the secondary faulting, and then it's coming into a permeable package of rocks, and you've got the high grade mineralization. So you've got all the makings of a big CRD discovery.
Yeah, definitely. But, the CRD discovery in the Eureka district was already made. So if you look back when mining started in the Ruby Hill area, which is the Eureka district, so to speak, the first production was back in 1864. And there was pretty much continuous production from 1864 to 1966. So that's 102 years. And essentially all of the production over that 100-year history was CRD deposits that outcropped on surface. So there's this ridge right beside the Archimedes pit, kind of a little, I wouldn't call it a mountain range, a hill range that runs along. And along that ridge, there's 100 years of mining. And they were all CRD, including right beside the Archimedes pit. And then the hills go into the alluvium. And Homestake found the Archimedes open pit mine, which is the one where we just finished mining and we're planning to put the ramp out of. They found that where the alluvial cover is, just beside that ridge. And all of their exploration, so they started up exploration in the 1990s. So effectively, there was a 30-year hiatus with almost nothing done in this district. Homestake did a good job of consolidating a lot of ground. After they completed that, they started exploration. They were lucky enough to find the Archimedes pit, which was a Carlin-style deposit. Then there's a few small deposits on both Golden Lake to the south and Timberline's ground, small open pit Carlin-style near surface operations that were that had little production as well since the 1960s. But underneath that alluvial cover has been very little exploration for base metals because Homestake was just looking for gold. At the bottom of the Archimedes pit, they drilled below the pit and they found a base metal deposit. We call that the Blackjack deposit. It's not yet in 43101. But when we were doing due diligence and we saw that, we're like, this deposit's wide open underneath the pit. They didn't drill it out because they weren't looking for base metals, but we don't have a problem with base metals.
Neither does the bottom line, Ewan.
Exactly, and very good grades. So actually the grades are on par, better on a per ton value basis than the gold zones there. So we said, well, this is a pretty compelling opportunity here. And it's since this whole area that we're drilling right now is under alluvial cover, the old timers never looked here. And the only example of there being CRD under the alluvial cover is Paycore that immediately adjoins us. And they're getting some really good hits. If you look at them, I think they just had a hole over 20% zinc with some lead and some gold and silver. And that's the downdrop of one of the near surface mines that made up the district for 100 years. And that project was discovered by previous operators like Homestake and Newmont were there. And they stopped working it in the 1960s. So that property again sat for 60 years until Paycore came along, acquired it, and they're drilling that deeper deposit now. And that deeper deposit is, you could look at those structures and one of the fault structures that's being interpreted is the Jackson fault. We think the Jackson, the Hawley join and then split as they go north. That's our view of it. But in that sort of Jackson trend is where the FAD deposit is. And we just drilled a target in that structural trend just south of the pit, just beside Blackjack, about 400 meters away. And we hit, I think the first hole into the upper zone was 25.8 meters of approximately 40% lead zinc and 15 ounces per ton silver and 0.9 grams gold. So extremely high grade. You don't see these grades almost anywhere in the world. We're drilling that area out as we speak. And the 1.5 to 2 kilometer, what we call the hilltop corridor, which trends from where we're drilling hilltop all the way to FAD, is about 1.5 or 2 kilometers underneath the alluvial cover with not a single drill hole into it. And we think the potential to discover one of a world-class, as you said, a world-class CRD deposit on this property is as good as you'll find anywhere in the world. And we announced those results, and it was kind of like a yawn, and oh yeah, they hit high grade base metals now.
Well, I don't think they'll be yawning for too long, Ewan, because speaking of Paycor, I just did an interview with Christina and Jim Gowans. Jim Gowans' claim to fame, or one of them, is that he was part of the team on Arizona Mining's big Taylor Hermosa discovery that got taken over. And what we talked at length about was you need that faulting to bring the fluids. That's your vent that gets the mineralization up there. Then you need the permeable rock, and ultimately you need the mineralization. And I think it's fair to start doing some arm waving that, that corridor you're talking about is, you could fit Taylor Hermosas in there. And Taylor Hermosa was a fabulous discovery that got Arizona shareholders paid off very well. And it's just one of your assets. Now you've got this big CRD, and these CRDs, they're like a big network of like sills and plumbing, and another one and a blowout here and thins there, and they just get very big in that permeable rock that the fluids are injecting into.
Yeah, they do. That was one that seemed to be quite big. It's got its big pods. FAD appears to be a fairly big pod that has open potential. I think that displays the potential in this area. But CRDs are also poddy, so especially the really, really high grade ones. Our grades are well in excess of the Taylor deposit's average grade that we're drilling, but probably in the area we're drilling, especially on the hilltop, probably a little more structurally complex. So we're drilling these pipes and pods of mineralization. But if you want me to share my screen, I'll just
let me enable it, Ewan. There you go, share it up.
So I'm just going to share a slide that we have some sort of in our internal work, and as we talk amongst companies, or talking to amongst our board, showing them what we're doing. I've got a slide that really speaks a bit to the CRD potential.
Yeah,
you're gonna be the first guy to see it. I really like your show, so I'm gonna put it up.
An exclusive.
An exclusive, yeah. Here's
world premiere.
So if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can.
What we're looking at here is obviously the Archimedes pit, and the Blackjack deposit sits right under it. And these red zones are CRD deposits and or mines. So these ones up here are the Silver Lick and Holly mines that produced many, many years ago. And that ridge I'm talking about comes along here. If you can see it coming like that, and everything on this side of it is alluvial cover, so the untested area. The TL mine.
But you have evidence of structure there, secondary structuring in that area.
Yeah, this is what we call the Bowman fault. This is the Holly fault coming down, and then this is the Jackson fault right here. And the Jackson fault goes from Hilltop to where FAD is. So the historic Ruby Hill mine was like over 15% lead, 21 ounce per ton silver, almost an ounce per ton gold. Almost 2 million tons were mined from that. These deposits, you can see almost 30 ounces per ton silver, 0.2 gold, 37% lead. Like, these grades are world-class. And these deposits are the historic ones, these four that were mined, and they were mined along this ridge where they outcropped. Yeah. Whereas FAD, Hilltop, and Blackjack are all under the alluvial cover. So this big structure coming down here is the one we're very excited about. That's where we're drilling these hilltop zones, sitting right up against against and underneath the pit. And it's completely open on strike down here. So we're just getting ready to start some geophysics and do this. But in black here is the footprint of that Taylor deposit that you were talking about. So the corridor here looks like it could be as bigger. And I think that's why Jim Gowans is also excited about this. So anyway, I'm going to stop my share.
Ah, that was a good one, Ewan. I mean, I don't think that arm waving is out of line, Ewan, because you've got the evidence there that, you've got the faulting, you've got the right kind of rocks for that fluids to get into, and you got the grade, and it looks like you could have the size potential as well.
Yeah, definitely. We're very excited about that target area. It's just another a leg to our story or our future, I guess is how I look at it, not our story, but our future is we think that when we mine, when we have all three operations going, McCoy Cove, which is now, I just say we're about 2,000 feet or 600 meters into the decline. So we're on target for fourth quarter underground drilling starting up there. You said our other project. We're ramping up right now at Granite Creek, and we're getting ready to go after the sulfide deposit at Ruby Deeps. But once all three of those are running and we're feeding our autoclave, the autoclave's got capacity of about 2,800 tons a day. And we think we've got sufficient ore to fill that. But when we get to 2,800 tons a day, that's all that facility can process. So how do we grow further? At Ruby Hill, we have a 2,000-3,000 ton a day plant sitting there that's not in our current vision of how we're going to become a bigger miner. And we're looking at these base metals and saying, well, let's convert this plant that we have into a base metal plant, do flotation. And if we can get up, let's say, to 3,000 tons a day in that facility, we'll double our daily production of mineralization that we're mining as a company. And if these grades hold up, that'll effectively, on a gold equivalent, double our production profile.
Well, and you're looking at more, if you do it on a dollar per ton basis, you're looking at some pretty rich rock there in the base metals.
Yeah, and when you look at those mines, as I showed on that slide, these historic mines had grades well in excess, I think, of what we see anywhere in the world being mined right now in terms of CRD deposits. So this district is rich, it's big. When you include going down onto all the way, because there was CRD mining also done down to Timberline's property to the south, that's about a 6 to 8 kilometer corridor of CRD mining for 100 years that has really had little to no modern exploration, especially looking for these type of deposits. So I kind of hope that the other guys working down there, because we like to follow and maybe own shares of personally or as a company of other things, that we truly hope those guys have as much success as possible in the world. Because hopefully with us having the infrastructure, it helps out with our future. So we're quite keen to see how that develops for them, and really that's a part of our company's story, so to speak, that is not really being looked at, because we only put out one release so far about it. But as time goes on, I think you'll hear a lot more.
I hold that enthusiasm, Ewan, because when you found Ruby Deeps, or when you announced the Ruby Deeps hits, I quickly did a lot of homework on Paycore, Golden Lake, and Timberline. And I proposed to them that I thought that this area was going to have a lot of news, a lot to talk about, and they were all kind enough to become sponsors. So I'm able to really bang the table on this Eureka area. And that brings up another topic of my Google Earth searching, you. And I think it's lost on people that, you are right beside the town of Eureka. There's roads everywhere. In fact, I think there's an Ace Hardware, really close to where you guys are. If you need some stuff, you can just jump in the truck and drive over there in 10 minutes.
I think you could walk there in 10 minutes. So, yeah, the town of Eureka was built on these mines. There's an airport right there. The highway runs kind of wraps around the pit. Our house, like we have several houses in Eureka where we house our people, etc. I stayed there a few months ago. At the beginning of summer, I went out and I was staying there, and at night, I went to the window, opened my window, and I could hear the drill spinning. So it was
No way.
a great sound to go to sleep to. You could see the lights on the mass of the drills, and the pit. You could see the pit right there all lit up at night. It's quite the spectacle, and that's how close the houses are. So easy for people to get to work and back home, and now nice little town.
Yeah,
Well,
it's remarkable in what you've already done there and the potential that that's opened up. But then to have that in such a phenomenal place, location, that's hard to repeat in this business, Ewan.
yeah, it is, and I have to commend Waterton in some ways because we acquired both Ruby Hill and Granite Creek from Waterton. But when the industry was in, 12 years ago, whatever, in peril, all the majors were selling assets. Market was so low that nobody had money, so nobody could buy assets. Here's a private equity fund that was gobbling up really good gold projects and base metal projects in a down market when nobody had money to buy them, so they could buy them at lower prices. They put together a pretty fabulous portfolio. They still got some really good assets in the Waterton portfolio, and now they're selling them. They're not the easiest guys to strike a deal with. They know they know what they have, and they drive a hard bargain, but they're fair. I see them as a fair group, and we've been able to do transactions, and Christina was able to do a transaction with them to get FAD. So people have been picking away at their projects. We think we cherry picked the best two. That's our view. But definitely that was a really smart contrarian move they made more than a decade ago, and now they're capitalizing on it for sure.
Well, and then you're capitalizing on it too because you got fair deals out of them, and then you've drilled and used your exploration experience to enhance those assets quite dramatically.
Yeah, well, if they listen to this, I'd say when we bought Granite Creek, especially, we had room to move up from what we paid. So we tried to drive a hard bargain on our side. We got it for what we were hoping to get it for, but probably could have moved a little bit if we had to.
Well,
I'd say Ruby Hill, we were at the max of what we were going to pay, but if we knew what we're seeing there today, we would have said that property is worth quite a bit more than what we paid. So we're pretty happy about both acquisitions.
Well, there's two things. I've been following you you've been a kind sponsor of my shows for a lot of years, Ewan, and I've always noticed a couple of tremendous skills on your table is your deal making ability and then being able to enhance assets with the drill rig.
Yeah, well, we've been fortunate. I guess we've got to know a bunch of these companies over the years, and if I call Barrick and try to call their corp dev department and have an idea or email them, I get a return email and a return call. So not everybody gets that, and that's been building relationships for well over a decade now. That's I think paying dividends today.
Well, I always like to leave on a little bit of what's in the near future, Ewan. What's pending? What do you guys got on the immediate horizon?
Well, I think we've released about 20 or 25% of the drill results that we've completed, or the drill holes that we've completed at Ruby Hill. So there's a lot of holes to be released. That includes several new targets that we've tested. So we have done additional drilling in different areas of just the polymetallics and our known gold deposits. So we are stepping out a bit, looking at other targets. So I'd say there's significant drilling or exploration news to come from Ruby Hill. There's still a lot of results. There's more step out holes to come from Granite Creek. So stay tuned. We know what we see visually, so we're pretty excited by that. So Granite Creek, I think, is going to continue to get bigger. We just started up a drill program at Buffalo Hill. I know we've never really talked about that. That's our open pit project right beside the Lone Tree Mill. that we're hoping to start developing next year, right? We're actually expecting to start building an open pit in 2023 there. So we're drilling there. Should be results coming from there. Q4, we start up the 40,000 meter underground drill program at McCoy Cove. So that'll yield, we think some spectacular, substantial, mostly infill results, but preparing that ultimately for mining. We've got 2 technical studies that we're going to be releasing, a PEA coming for Ruby Hill and a feasibility study for the underground at Granite Creek, both expected in the first quarter. And we're expecting in the coming month or two the release of the study for the restart of the autoclave that I think is really the big one that a lot of the funds are waiting for. What is the cost of that? Given cost escalation we've seen at other sites, is i-80 going to be the next one with a substantial blow up in costs from what we've been guiding? And I'm pretty confident to say the answer to that's no. So we're right now it looks like everything that's coming is going to be good in my opinion, and I'm pretty excited for the last few months of this year as we deliver a lot of results and a lot of upgrades to our technical work on these projects. And we've got a lot of upgraded technical work internally, but in order for us to share any of that, we have to bring it up to 43101 compliant, bring in a third party to vet what we've been doing, and then we can publish it. So there's I think the news flow is going to be as it's been. I hope I'm talking to you every couple of weeks.
Sounds like we're going to have a lot to talk about in future interviews, you. And is any of that results still to come from Ruby Hill? Is that any of that going into the CRD target?
Yeah, up until about 2 weeks ago, we only released 2 holes from there so far. Up until about 2 weeks ago, we had 3 drills on that. So we had 3 drills on it before we released those holes. So we could see that we hit something rich, some follow-up holes, looking really good. So we added drills to that, pulled it off other targets. Now, because as I said, we're on to step out to the south is BLM ground, and we have to do the permitting of that to get the drills. We have to get a new area of surface disturbance in order to start stepping out. We're just working on that submission. So in the meantime, we're able to do geophysics in that. So we're doing some geophysics right over where we're drilling, see how these things light up in different geophysical methods. If we know where we're hitting sulfides, so wow, that looks good in geophysics there, then start driving those geophysical lines south, and hopefully that'll open up tens of targets for us to start drilling along strike to the south. We've got 1.5 kilometers to our boundary, or about a mile, and gradually start moving that way and drilling these targets. And so that's something else we're doing. We're back drilling the Ruby Deeps deposit, so we're extending it out to the north right now. So we should see that get bigger as we move north. We continue to see big widths of alteration in our drill holes as we head north, and when we get those assays, we'll deliver those, and then those will move into our PEA study that we're doing. We're hoping to have the PEA and the feasibility for Granite Creek out prior to year end, but as you know, assays are taking so long. We're waiting on a lot of results right now, so that's put a bit of a delay for us getting the final drilling from this year's program into our resources. And then the debate internally is, when's the cutoff date? Like at Ruby Hill, our cutoff date was supposed to be August 1st, but as we step north, we keep hitting mineralization. I'm saying, well, wait, 1 more month.
Just give me a little more time. Let that truth machine keep telling us the truth.
Yeah. So the current hole in Ruby Deeps, probably the last one we include in the resource. So we've delayed it until we get the hole we're just finishing, or just finished, in Ruby Deeps. So that's now we'll start working away towards the resources, modeling up both the 426 and the Ruby Deep zone. Those are the only 2 that'll be included in the PEA. And we've retained a firm to start modeling, helping us model and get hopefully in a position to release an inaugural resource for the Blackjack deposit. So that could add a lot of ounces or ounces gold equivalent to our already substantial resource base. And this new hilltop zone probably won't be in our new resource. So, there's still a lot of upside to what we're doing.
Wow. That's like I said, you had a little time to talk about a lot of stuff, and we've spent close to an hour talking about it all, and there's hours more we could talk. So again, Ewan, thank you very much for your time. And if there's any closing notes or things you want to close on, I think you filled up the story on what makes you undervalued.
Yeah, well, I closing note, I think you have a great show. I enjoy being on it and known you for years. So pretty happy that you you know makes me feel good when you say nice things about us, because I know you look at a lot of stories.
Well, and I don't say nice things about it unless there is something to proving it, which is your truth machine. So good on you. Keep going, Ewan, and I'm going to close it off now.
Oh, wait, one more thing.
Okay.
With what's going on in the world here, I
Oh,
think we've seen a little blip in the price of gold, but I think with the raising interest, we're going to see housing markets and slow down in manufacturing, et cetera, slow down in the US, given what's going on right now. I've already seen companies like Netflix drop to a third of where they were. I think that's going to start relating to the earnings in US companies. The US dollar at that point should roll over a bit. And when the US dollar starts to roll over, I think the gold price is going to really go north here. So I'm pretty excited about the next 6 months. I think we're going to see a huge reversal in the mining or the metals markets. And to me, it's a place to be.
and that US dollar is crucial for people to look at because it's almost a perfect correlation. When the US dollar is going up, gold's going down. And this last year, we've seen a lot of speculation on the raising of interest rates that was bullish, well, treated bullishly for the US dollar, which put pressure on the price of gold. But I think we're at an inflection point where that they can't keep raising interest rates. Like you said, Ewan, if people can't even afford their Netflix subscription at $8 or $10 or $12 a month, what is the real economy looking like? And if you keep raising interest rates into a slowing economy, you're going to cause significant drop in that economic growth. And then you got to start stimulating again. So there's a lot of things lining up for the US dollar to be under pressure and gold to turn the corner.
Yeah, in my view, the Fed has always been behind the curve. They're supposed to be some of the smartest guys around. I don't know if I'm going to call them the smartest people. We go from this is only a bit of transitionary inflation to now stagflation. I could have told them that before it happened. They don't need a treasury, just call you and Downey.
Or Allan Laboucan at Rocks and Stocks News. Great, you and I always enjoy our chats. So I'm going to close it off now.
Okay, thanks.
Folks, I'm always looking for 5-10 baggers, and usually that's in small companies, and I don't often find a $500 million valuation company that I think could be a 10 bagger of the future. And in order to be that, you have to have the right kind of assets in a $500 million company to see them go in that direction. And I've said it before, and I keep seeing with the truth machine they're drilling that this looks like a Barrick that I remember Barrick when it was a small company that was growing into a household name. And in order for a $500 million valuation company to grow into a 10 bagger, it kind of needs to follow that path. And with I think they have a world-class asset at Granite Creek that just keeps getting better. Ruby Hills is just remarkable in what they're finding at Ruby Deeps. As they get closer to the pit and nearer surface, they've got extensions of that. These are thick intersections of high grade gold, right, easily accessible from the bottom of the pit to at the west side. Then you got the CRD potential at the south side that, you know, Ewan was kind enough to share us his map that shows you can fit a Taylor deposit inside of what they're looking at. And maybe Taylor could be smaller than what they're looking at the CRD target. Well, you know, it's, well, definitely you could fit a Taylor deposit inside of what the target you're looking at. So, you know, folks, I think that i-80 is a cornerstone asset for investors in this sector. And I think you can hold it for the next 10 years and just see your money grow like it did in the early stages of a Barrick success. And, you know, that always wakes me up in the morning, and Ewan and his news releases wake me up on a regular basis. And I'm really glad we can roll everything out for the investors, because I think you're going to see this roll out into a much bigger story. And we've been able to be one of the key drum bangers for the story. So on that note, my shows are always for information purposes only. I encourage you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. Go look at the news releases that i-80 puts out and their corporate presentations, and you're going to realize why I'm so enthusiastic. And you can tell from the grin on Ewan's face all the time how enthusiastic he is, and him putting his own money into the stock. Can't say much more than that. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.